All right, so we are happy to present Mr. Jeff Shouse, one of the Dime Box High School agriculture teachers for you tonight. He's going to be speaking about swine for us in our Livestock 101 session. As we get going throughout the session, you are welcome to unmute yourself and ask questions as we go along, or you are welcome to ask them in the chat. All right, Mr. Shouse, off to you.
All right, well, good evening. All of you that are listening or watching, I know are looking at getting a pig or several pigs for whether you're talking about your county show or major livestock shows that are coming up. And if you're new to it, I guess the first thing we need to talk about is facilities. And even if you're not new to it, there may be some things that you need to do or correct or change about your facilities. You know, this time of year, we can be 95 one afternoon and we can be 35 in the morning as we're coming up. You know, you want to keep that in mind. I like barns that have concrete in them, but that's not necessarily a 100% guarantee on that, because we do get pigs that do get some joint issues. They get some, you know, some hoof issues. And so as far as your facilities, if you're building a new facility, you need to make sure that the north and the west are protected because of the evening sun gets hot, and then also because of the north wind. And we'll talk about this a little later on, but you want your facilities where your pig doesn't receive much sunshine, because that sun can damage the hair, and especially if you've got a white hog, it can cause them to get freckles, blue freckles, especially if you're trying to run it as a yard or whatever the case may be. So as far as your facilities, the main things you've got to have, they've got to be dry and they've got to be warm this winter, but then they also have to be a chance for them to be cool. Is we get some of these days where it is extremely hot in the afternoons. Because you know, Texas weather, it's a roller coaster. And so it is very challenging. I would recommend that you have facilities that have you know, some electricity in them, so that you can hang a fan, but you can also hang you know, your heat lamp. So running water is so important. You cannot hardly put water in a bucket and water your pig, because what they're going to root it out. You watered them this morning, you went to school, you went to work, shoot, by 10 o'clock in the morning, they kicked the bucket over, and now they've gone all afternoon without water. Get some kind of pressurized water system done, whether you run a water hose, whether you need to run a line, something with a nipple or a bowl. The bowl waters work very good because they don't tend to waste as much water. The nipples, I've seen them stand there with their nose on it just to cool themselves off and run it for, seem like 3 or 4 or 5 minutes. And so they can make more of a mess. So for your facilities, let's keep them warm, but yet have the ability to turn the fan on, because most of you are probably going to show, we're looking at February, March, and even maybe early April. We can have some really cold days and then again some warm days. So keep that in mind. As far as concrete, we raise hogs on concrete. It's easy to clean. If you're building a new set of facilities, you want a little bit of a tilt on your concrete just so that it drains very well. Okay, and you always want to put your waters at the far end so that it drains right on out rather than back into it. But, and that being said, you may need some kind of little sand lot, some kind of little sand place for them in case you do get a pig that's got a few joint issues. Because concrete, stand on concrete every day, day after day after day, can be tough on some of these joints. We like to use shavings. Whether you use the small pellets that you can add water to and they fluff up, or you use some kind of flake shavings, that's strictly up to you. But you don't want that pig laying on cold concrete without some kind of shavings there. That is extremely hard on the joints, and that leads into sicknesses, which we'll get into later. The next thing I guess we'll look at is selection, because if you haven't bought your pig yet, you're getting ready to buy your pigs. Okay? So you need to have in mind of what you're obviously going to go spend on your pig. And then you need to, if you've been buying at a certain place, well, and you like that breeder, well, then that's obviously where you need to go back to. But if you're looking for another place to buy pigs, ask around and find those breeders that are easy to work with, and that's what you need to go with. But as far as going out and buying that pig, we probably need to look at it at about a 7-month-old pig for your show. Some of these pigs grow a little slower and some grow a little faster. If you get to a place where the breeder says they're a little slower growing, maybe you want to look at 7.5-month-old pig. It depends on, and so those are questions that you need to have in mind before you go to select your pig. Have kind of a dollar figure that you want to spend, kind of figure out how many that you can house and what you want to do with those pigs. And then, talk to them about how fast are they going to grow. But I would highly recommend that all of them be at least 7 months of age. That gives them a chance to grow and get a good skull in them, and get a good rib and some good bone, and just get that masculinity that they need. So that we've done all that, now we're looking at the fact of selecting the pig. You want a white pig, you want a black pig, you want a painted pig. There again, you need to have that kind of in mind before you go. If your facilities have a lot of sun that gets to them, maybe a white hog is not what you want, because their skin is not going to stay as good. They're going to sunburn possibly on those cold days. You're going to lay right next to that fence where the sun's hitting them, where they stay warm and they fall asleep, and then they get sunburned. So, and if you have a pen that stays completely covered, well, maybe you want a white hog. It just depends on, what kind of facilities you have. I will tell you that the black hogs, the Hampshire kind of hogs, they're a little easier to upkeep as far as their skin, just because of their pigmentation that's in the skin. Okay. The style now is that we've got to have a good-footed hog. It means one that doesn't get soft or flat, a little flat-footed, because if that pig has an issue, when we're talking about an 8 or 9 week old pig that's 30, 40, 50 pounds, that's only going to get worse as they get larger and more weight they put on themselves. So we need to make sure we start with good-footed pigs to start with. That front end needs to be so clean and up front end now. They need to kind of be tall, pointed shoulders. And we'll get into how you're going to walk them later, but that's where we need to start. And then we need to have a pig that's got some shape. And I say shape, that's muscle. That's already got some muscle as a young pig. Maybe not overly muscled, but some of those overly muscled pigs, as they grow, tend to get too much muscle. And so that can affect the way they walk in the joints. And then we want something that's got some good rib shape, that's got some roundness. As they eat, you can tell those little ribs are really growing, and they're going to be able to really put a lot of body in those pigs. And so on selecting them, that's where we want to start. So put a good-footed pig that's up front. It's got some muscle shape, and it's got some rib shape. Check the knees out. Make sure the knees are straight on those pigs as far as there's not any bow when you look at them from the front side, and get around behind them and do the same thing. Like a pig that's got a tail head that's up on top of the spine. It kind of looks like a scorpion, so to speak. Those tend to have a nice level back as they get older. Okay? So those are things you need to look at. And there again, have in mind what you want to do, how much you want to spend, what kind of pig are we looking at. And of course, if you want some of the purebreds, well, then you obviously need to have that in mind as well. Now that we've got your pig, or we're getting ready to go get your pig, first of all, you got to call the breeder. What kind of feed do I need to buy? So that you don't go buy the pig and then think on the way home you're going to stop at dark and get pig feed, and we don't have any pig. Okay? I don't care what feed you use as long as you stay consistent on your feed. If we change feeds drastically, that can lead to ulcers, that can lead to scars, and that kind of thing. So I would call ahead and ask that breeder, say, hey, what kind of feed are we feeding? What do I need to get? And have that bag of feed already in the house. These pigs are little, 40, 50, 60 pounds, so a bag of feed is going to last you probably a week. if you're talking about one pig. If you buy multiple pigs, well, then you may need a bag or two. I wouldn't go out and buy 10 bags to begin with, because then your feed's going to be a little old. We want to feed fresh. Okay.
So if we needed to switch feeds, how would you do that?
If I was going to switch feeds, and let's say I'm going from, you're talking about two different brands.
Yes.
If I'm going from Linders to Mormons or Sunglow or Acro or whatever you're feeding, I would do it on a slow basis. I would continue to feed what I've been feeding, and I would slowly start adding a little bit of that other in there for 3 or 4 or 5, maybe a week long, before I would get them back onto the feed that you want to use. Because we tear that stomach up, they're going to go off feed. Pigs can get ulcers, and that's something else to talk about, is that their system is very similar to ours. You know, we can get things like Imodium, we've used Prolasac, we've used a lot of different things, preparation H, we go hernia, we can use a lot of things on pigs that we use on humans, because they are very, very similar to us. I recommend you feed twice a day. And by feeding twice a day, we know if that little pig is eating this morning. And then we know he's eating this evening. If you go back to the next morning and eats feed, that tells me it's a red flag right there, something's wrong. If you feed once a day and you throw the feed in there, and you come back the next morning and it's dark and you throw feed on top of the other feed and didn't eat, so now we're at 2 days that we haven't eaten. And these little pigs are 30, 40, 50, 60 pounds. There's not a lot of pig, so to speak, and when they get sick, they don't last near as long. So by feeding twice a day, we can keep our feed fresh in the buckets, and we can see what they're eating. Okay? And then good clean water. I recommend that you, like I say, with the nipples, a bowl or something, check it every day. Because if that pig, if something happens, it gets stopped up, something gets in there, something's broke, that little pig went 2 or 3 days. You say, well, he's not eating his feed. Well, why is he not eating feed? Well, maybe he doesn't have water. I don't know about you, but I like to drink when I eat. And they're the same way. And so make sure that you've got water, and make sure we're feeding twice a day. Now, yes, how much do I feed the pig? Well, that's that magical question. I can't tell you to put out 1 pound or 2 pounds this morning, because the little pigs are going to eat less and the big pigs are going to eat more. So you need to, first, it's going to take you a few days to decide how much is that pig kind of eating a day or eating a feed. And then when that happens, then just adjust your feed accordingly. You want you'd like for him to clean it up so that he's hungry at the next feed, rather than leave a bunch of feed in there, because flies get in it and everything else, and it's not fresh. Okay? So that's kind of a tricky question. Well, how much do I feed? You're going to have to kind of decide. And then we'll talk a little about this later on, but you also got to decide, if you bought a big little pig, when is the show date? And so how much do I need that little pig to grow? You know, so you've got to be careful. We'll talk about weighing and that kind of thing later. So we've got, you buy the feed that's easy for you to feed. Because when we sell pigs to people, I tell them what we feed, but I tell them to buy the pig feed that's easy for you to get. Don't have to drive 50 miles down the road to go get this particular feed when you've got a feed store right there next to you that sells this kind of feed. You know, you want to use what's most comfortable for you. Okay? And then as the feed, you know, they've got so many feeds out there now. You know, you've got 18%, 16%, 20%, 23%. There, you know, when you select that feed, that pig, I would ask you to ask the breeder to give you a little bit of advice. Say, what % protein do I need to feed my pig? You know, what do I need to do right now? And they're going to be real good about helping you out. Now, you've already gone through that 2 weeks, 3 weeks since you bought your pig. And you say, now what do I need to feed? I run out of feed. I'm getting ready to run out of feed. I need to go buy feed. What am I going to do? I know there's several feed companies out there that have actual videos that you can watch so that they give you pointers of what to do. But you don't want your pig getting too fat. That tells me that we either need to slow down how much we're feeding, or we need to increase our protein. we don't want our pig too muscled up. That tells me he's getting too much protein. So we need to decrease the amount of protein in the feed so that his joints can develop and the pig can develop like he needs to develop. Because you can ruin a pig by feeding it too much protein. He gets too much muscle, he gets too tight, and his joints get tight. And then as he gets older or she gets older, we've got joint problems, we've got walking problems, we've got those kind of things. So keep that in mind on feed.
And then we've got one question in the chat. What if it's a new pig and you just got it and it's not eating very much at all?
Well, if you've got a new pig that you just got home, several things. Did we turn it out on is our pen, does it have dirt and grass in it? Because if it does, that little pig probably was raised on concrete or on crates. And all this one to do is eat grass or root around. So it's filling up on grass and dirt is what's happening. So it's learning its new environment is what it's doing. It's getting adapted to it. So then it's going to go back to it. If the pig is on concrete at your house and it's not eating, did you change feeds? Is it lonesome? I mean, is the water working? There's a lot of things. Is it a single pig? You know, there's a lot of variables here. And if you want to, you could ask a question about that.
Do you have to have a companion pig?
No, you do not have to have a companion pig. And that's a good question. I have a lot of people that will come buy a single pig, but then they'll buy a little feeder pig to go with it. Just to put in there so they have a snuggle buddy. Because as they're little, I mean, even this week, we're talking about getting in, tonight's going to be 63, 64. It's going to be pretty cool. Next week, we've got 2 cold fronts coming already. So you got this little old 40-pound pig at home by himself, and it's going to be, they're talking about upper 50s. Well, that's kind of a recipe for some sickness there. So if you buy one pig, you're putting all your eggs in one basket. Because what if that pig doesn't eat? What if that pig comes up injured? What if he gets sick? What if he's crazy? I've seen pigs that you cannot tame. They're just, completely crazy. So your odds are better with 2 pigs. But if you cannot afford 2 show pigs, I would recommend that you buy you a feeder pig from that same fella or same person that you bought your good pig from. And so that's a great question. I was going with another thought there that I didn't lost. As far as sickness, we're talking about a little pig. If you notice that pig's not eating at all, make sure he's breathing good. Make sure he doesn't have diarrhea. If they go to coughing, we need to get some kind of antibiotic in that pig within 12 hours. Because those little guys, they get so, it settles in their lungs so fast, and then they get that scar tissue in there. And if you let it go 2 or 3, 4 days, there's a good chance that pig will never get over that the rest of his life. And even if we get him well, he still has, or she still has scar tissue in those lungs. And so when you start walking that pig, it's a heavy breather. It just doesn't do well. Okay? So sickness is of utmost concern. Within 12 hours, we've got to get something in those pigs. They get the diarrhea. We need to take care of that quickly. If you notice the pig is holding his head sideways, did we get water in his ear, or does he have an ear infection? That happens. We can give some penicillin. Just try, they will get a little, sometimes they get a hernia. Unfortunately, that's, we had a family here not long ago that had that. They took it to the vet, sewed it up, and did find it, and they showed it. It's not 100% guarantee. Sometimes a pig will get a prolapse, whether it's most of the time it's an anal prolapse, and we can use preparation H. Take care of that. So your goal is, and if you're feeding twice a day, we're watching what's going on with that pig, okay, or those pigs. So keep that in mind. You want to worm your pig 2 or 3 times during the feeding process. Most of the time, if you buy that pig when he's 8 or 10 weeks old, and we feed him till he's 7 months old, you only have that pig at your house 4.5 to 5 months. Is all you feeding this pig and raising it. You need to worm that pig 2 or 3 times during that process. And I'd recommend using a different kind of wormer each time, because each one will take care of different worms. There's a withdrawal period on all those wormers. And so let's say that you're going to show your pig on March the 1st, and you're going to use a particular wormer that's got a 28-day or 30-day withdrawal. You need to make sure that you don't worm your pig after February 1st. You know, so you want, or even actually in the back end of January. So, you know, you want to look at the withdrawal periods when you worm medicine. And I'd recommend you worm them 2 or 3 times during your feeding process. It takes care of lice. Sometimes these pigs go scratching and itching. And that's due to lice or mites. That'll take care of that. And then just feed efficiency. That pig is not, he's eating a lot, but he's not gaining. Well, is he worming? I mean, what's going on there that's causing that? Another thing I have here is to weigh your pig. Even from the time you get him. I say doesn't weigh but 40 pounds. Sit around like that. I'd weigh that pig. Weigh it, and I would do it every 7 days. Whether Saturday evening works best for you or Sunday evening works best for you, whatever day works best for you and your family, you ought to start weighing that pig every 7 days. And make it an easy, of course you have to have set skills. That's another thing. You know, if you're new to the game, as far as showing, that is an expense, unless you can find county agents. A lot of them have scales. Maybe your neighbors have scales. But I would definitely get a set of scales, because it is, as we get further into the feeding process and that pig we get close to the show, and we need to weigh twice a week, it's a pain to have to run around trying to find a set of scales, because then your neighbor's using scales as well. And I don't recommend loading your pig on a trailer and haul it down to somebody's house and jumping the pig off the way again. Every time we load that pig, we're asking for a foot injury. Whether you tear a pad, you tear a dew claw, you do something like that, we're asking for injuries. So I don't recommend doing that. But if you'll run your pig in that scale and do it in a gentle way, make it a fun thing. Even if you got to open up both ends and let them walk through it a few times. Just let them walk through it. Never give a shot or medicine in a set of scales, because when you give that shot to that pig in that set of scales, that tells him right there, it's a red flag. I'm not going back in. So you're going to fight your pig. And if you're fighting your pig, it's not fun. And we get mad and we beat on our pigs, and we push, and then we're pushing that pig in there, and then we might tear a dew claw or something like that. So make it an enjoyable experience to weigh your hog, but do not give shots in there. Get you some kind of chart, a calendar or whatever, where you can write down every 7 days that you're going to weigh your pig. And I would recommend over time that you keep notes on this, so you can say next year, hey, my pig on this and this date weighed right here. And this pig worked out very good at the show for that day. And so if you keep a little history about that from year to year to year to year, I don't care if you write it on the barn wall, put the date and write it on there. But it's critical to weigh your pigs. And then of course, washing them. If it's 35 outside this evening and it's raining and it's cold, I don't recommend you washing your pig, unless we're going to the show. If we're within a week of the show, I mean, that's a different deal. We're trying to prepare that pig, but those last, 60 days or so, we need to start washing those pigs at least once a week. Make it a fun experience. You catch a good sunny afternoon when it warms up 75 degrees, 80 degrees, you wash your pig. It doesn't shock them with the cold water. They like the sunshine, and they like you rubbing on them. And so we didn't use anything fancy. We used tail and mane soap, use ivory soap, whatever works for you, and just wash your pig. And then as we get down closer to the show, you probably need to wash that pig 2 or 3 times a week. Make it a fun experience so that the pig enjoys it. Kind of going back, I thought of something else while ago as well. As I'm talking, I'm thinking of other things. Do we have any questions?
Not so far.
Not so far. But this weighing thing, I think is so critical because that last 30 days is probably the most critical time before you show your pig. And so let's say we want that pig to weigh 260 pounds at show date. 30 days before that, we ought to figure that pig needs to weigh at least 200 pounds. So that's 2 pounds of gain per day for 30 days. That puts us at 260. And if we've been having to hold our pig a little bit, that helps the pig look fresh. It helps them put on a lot of weight and look the part. If we don't do our homework and allow ourselves that 60 pounds that last 30 days, then our pig's going to look stale. It's going to probably be flat ribbed. It's going to have a shallow bottom. As chine bone maybe sticking up. The skin is just not as pretty. So your job, and I tell a lot of people, is that kind of weigh your pig and then just kind of figure out, all right, February the 1st, I want to weigh 200 pounds. That's where I want to be. And so your job is to get your pig to February 1st weighing 200 pounds. If that my show is at March 1st. If the show is later, well, then you want to kind of do some adjusting there on your time. But that gives you a good point to be. Or on the other side, you have some of these pigs that are very slow growing. And it may be where just you have to fight your pig the whole way just to get him there. So you've got to kind of watch your pig. If you've got 3 pigs in the barn, I promise you that last 30 days, 60 days, you're going to feed them all 3 different things. Because of the fact they all eat different. And they're going to grow different. You've got pig A is kind of soft, and so we're going to add protein. Pig B is a little harder made, slower growing. So we're not adding all the protein. We're adding some of the lower protein with some fat and some, some shaving guts or something else. And you've got this other pig that's just kind of cruising on whatever we want it to go on. So you're going to adjust those. And I guess that's another thing to back up. If you've got multiple pigs, when they're babies, you can leave them together right now. Let them get used to this new facilities. Let them get used to all this stuff. Let them get used to this new feed, this new barn, this new water, all that. But as we get going, you probably need to have some kind of way to separate those things due to the fact that they're all going to go different those last 60 days, or maybe even 90 days. I'd say you can't say, well, this is what I'm going to do right now at 60 days, 90. They change so much. And then I would recommend as soon as you get your pig to gentle it down. It's got to be gentle. If that pig stands in the corner scared of you, how in the world are you going to walk this pig? How in the world are you going to wash this pig? How in the world are you going to weigh this pig? So you get you a pig, you get you a bucket. I don't care if you use, I've had kids put a brush on a stick and start slowly brushing their pig from a distance, and then they get to where they like that before you're rubbing their bellies and they're falling over. I've had people use marshmallows as a treat, cookies, whatever it takes to gentle your pig down. Once it's gentle, then we can do a lot of things. But if you've got a wild pig, it makes it very difficult to train. I'd recommend that you get you 2 or 3 hog panels and make you a little show ring out there just so you can turn your pig out. You practice showing that pig with a stick. Okay? Most of the time, use 2 sticks. We'll tap on them and get their heads up. And once they learn that process, those pigs love to get outside. They don't like being inside, just like you don't like being inside on a cold, wet day. They want to be outside. And so that pig is going to learn. But the sooner you start that, people say, well, I'm going to wait till, the month before the show starts. It's too late. You've got to get started with those little pigs. Gentle them down, get them outside, and teach them to walk. I've seen pigs walking when they're 45 days old and walk like a champ. And so that makes it a lot easier in the process. All right, I need some questions.
So when you are looking at the growth rate of the pig from week to week, at the beginning of the project and towards the end of the project as you get closer to the show? What do they need to be looking for?
Well, like I say, depending on how fast your pig grows and as your pig an eater, I like to save about 60 pounds there the last month. And so right now as a little pig, I pretty well tell them, you give them all they want right now. Let's get along here because our county show is going to be the 1st of March. March 3rd, 2nd, whatever it is, but it's 1st of March. So I'm saying that, you know, we're going to weigh them this week that we buy our pig, but I would think the next 30, 45 days, we're going to kind of just let them be a pig. We're going to let them eat all they want. But we're going to weigh and we're going to say, all right, this pig gained 10 pounds this week. If I do the math, next week that's 20 pounds, 30 pounds, you know, you can kind of start stair-stepping to see where we're going to be in this process. This pig gained 20 pounds already this week, so whoa, you got to slow things down. Most pigs, 2 pound gain is good. You're going to have some that's going to gain 1.25 pounds, and then you're going to have some that look at feeding gain. Some of these older pigs, you turn them loose, they're going to gain 3 pounds a day. And that's probably a little much for most of them. And so that's where you've got to do your work and say, all right, I got this 50-pound pig. We're going to show it 1st of March. I'm going to let it rock and roll here. You know, Thanksgiving, I want to see where we're at, Christmas, and then I may need to slow him down a little bit. And it's okay to slow those pigs down. You just slow them down to 1 pound a day. That's not going to hurt the structure of that pig. 1.25 pounds a day is not going to hurt. The pig may think he's hurting. The pig's hungry, but the pig's really not hungry. You know, we can add some oats or something else to the diet to help out if we're worried about the pigs not getting enough to eat. But if we're getting £1, £1.25, a lot of it's doing your homework, your math, because everyone's different. All right.
So what should I take to the show? What should be in my show box?
What should be in your show box? Well, honestly, the thing that a lot of kids I see do is they've done this. They fed them this all week long, 2 weeks before the show. And when they get the show, everybody's so excited, they start overfeeding their pig. Well, that causes that pig now to have scars. The only day that really matters what your pig looks like is the day of the show. I want my pig a little hungry prior to the show. Because when I put feed in there that morning before the show for that pig to eat, I want him to eat. I want him to consume as much as I want him to consume. If you've been overfeeding your pig all along, he's got a full belly and he's just not hungry. He's not in the mood to eat. Things to put in your show box, obviously you need a show stick that fits you. If you're a little guy, you need a short one. If you're a big guy, you need a longer one. Find a whip that works good for that pig. You've been using this whip for the last 3, 4, 5 weeks, and you go buy a brand new one the day of the show. The pig's not used to that whip. It has a different feel. It has a different smell. It could affect your pig. So use the same whip that you've been using. Obviously, you need to take a brush. I recommend you take a water hose and your soap. Don't use your neighbor's soap because we do have a little reaction to it. We always took our own water from home because are you on well water, are you on county water, are you on city water, it makes a difference. So I recommend that you take your own water, get you a 3-gallon jug, 5-gallon jug, a little 1-gallon jug, whatever it takes, and you take your own water from home because then that way I know that pig is used to that feed, is used to that water, and we do well. I would also obviously put your soap in there, your brushes, and those kind of things. Your feed, you might want to pre-package your feed to take with you to keep you from overfeeding. You know, and so that you say, all right, and this bag is what we've been feeding, and this is what we take. Take a little extra in case you need to give a little extra right there before we show, or your neighbor needs a little help or something like that. You know, you might want to put some things in there that they make some aspirin-free or drug-free aspirin and different things that don't test. I guess that's something else we need to talk about. In some of the county shows, they do test granny reserve, and then they sometimes pull a random pig to test. Make sure you aren't feeding, you know, if your feed is that you're using got a withdrawal period on, you need to make sure you take that away from them at the right time. Make sure we're not giving medications at the wrong time. Surely the majors, they're going to drug test everything that sells. And so if you go to Houston and you're in the Barra show and you're number 10, they're going to test you. So you want to make sure that you've got that tended to. And so, you know, you may want to find something there, you know, for scars or, you know, maybe you get some cracked foot. You know, we can super glue that cracked foot. We can do a lot of things to help with that. And so that's what I would recommend. And probably the less you take, the better, because of the leave it out in the car. You can always come back in. Because of spaces, you know, especially for majors, it does get crowded. It kind of shows you a little different.
So what are some things they could do leading up to the show to set them up for success? And what should they do when they get to the show and get unloaded to set themselves up for success?
Well, obviously, I always told my girls that we were not going to get beat by not being ready. That somebody else may have a better pig, but we weren't going to get beat by not doing our work at home. So there again, we need to walk that pig. That pig needs to be gentle. The skin coat needs to be pretty. If it's a white pig, to me, there's nothing prettier than a snow white pig. We would take the last 3 weeks, the pigs never saw sunlight. And we said we'd walk it late in the evenings. Because that sun, just 10 minutes of that sun hitting that pig, it can cause you know, some sunburn. And so that's what we would do. And then you will walk that pig. And we never walk 30 minutes a day. We would walk every day. We may be 6 to 8 minutes, but we walk every day the last 2 to 3 weeks. And when I say walk your pig, that's with the head up, that's with walking, that's where it's being presented like you're going to present to the judge. Okay? So not just after chasing your pig and let it root around. That's not walking. Walking is with the head up and meaningful walk. And then there again, we've got to fit our animal, whether you're talking about clipping your hog. And if you don't know how to clip your hog, get with someone that knows how. A lot of breeders do that. Maybe your neighbor, county agents can do that, whatever the case may be. Styles are changed a little bit right now, clipping hogs. We're kind of leaving a little more hair on the pigs now. Kind of going to an old school kind of a deal, like we used to have it. But get with someone that can clip your hog. And I like to do it about a week out in advance. But get with someone that can do that. And then do your homework at home. From washing a pig, walking a pig, to feeding your pig, doing your homework. So when you go to town, you've got that pig as good as you can make it. And then of course when you get there, you don't want to overfeed your pig. You want to feed it on a regular schedule. You're going to do the same things. Keep it a little bit hungry the night before, the day before your show, whatever case, however your show is set up, so that it eats when I want it to eat. And there again, there's some different things that you can do as far as getting them to fill out. I've always heard that from the time that pig eats that feed to the time it works its way through its digestive system is about an hour, hour and a half. And so if I want my pig to really fill out, it needs to fill out. Well then, and I'm showing at 8 o'clock, well then at 6:30, I need to get my pig fed. And so that way it's got time to work its way back. Okay, so that's some things that I would recommend you do. And then while you're at the show, get your pig out. Don't leave it in the pen, because that pig needs to get out and exercise. You've exercised him at home. Why don't you get him out there? They're in that small little pen. They need to get out where they can use the restroom. Just moving around allows them to get their digestive system going. And so get them out. You know, if it's an open parking lot, we'll be careful because in case something's scared, but we want to watch out for rocks and that kind of thing. But do the same things at the show that you did at home. Okay. Any other questions? Nobody's asking anything?
So far, not in the chat box. So we've talked a little bit about light and dark hogs. For new families that are just getting started or interested in swine, how do they go about selecting a breed to get started with?
Okay. If you're going to the county shows, most of the county shows around here are not breed specific. They're strictly all breeds show together. And so typically kids show crossbreds. There are some county shows that do have breed shows, and so you'd select your pig according to whatever, you want to go into. The majors obviously have crossbreds, and they have the Yorks, the Hamps, the Durocs, the Berkshires. They have breeds. But your county shows, typically it's a cross. It's going to be a dark cross kind of pig, or it's going to be a light cross kind of pig. And so there again, you need to know, back to the original thing is, what am I looking for? What kind of hog are you looking for? And there again, your facilities. You can get a solid white hog that's a cross, but yet my facilities allow a lot of sunshine in there, so I probably don't need to select that light colored hog. So I guess if you want to be safe about the dark cross hogs are a safer bet as far as facilities, sunshine, skin coat, and that kind of thing. I don't know if I'm answering your question or not.
Mm-hmm.
But we need to have a game plan before you go. Don't just show up and say, all right, I'm here to buy a pig. We need to have sat down with your family and kind of discuss what we're looking for. Where do you want to go with this? Is it strictly a county pig, or is it a major and county? I mean, because you can validate for both. You get you some bears. I guess that's another thing. Make sure that in your rules, whatever county you're going to, can you show just bears, or can you show either sex? That's something you need to know too before you go. What are the weight limits? Somebody told me today, I think San Antonio went to minimum of 240 this year for their hogs, which is a pretty good sized pig just for the minimum weight. And so, do you have a weigh back at your show? There's a lot of things. The main thing is read the rules and see what's going on. If you don't, and you're brand new at this, get with some people that have been showing for a while. Maybe they'll share a few tricks with you. A lot of people are scared to share their tricks because they've learned it over time. And so, anyhow, those are some things. Maybe the best thing to do is find a family that's already had their last kid graduate. Sometimes those are they're a little more forthcoming in sharing secrets because they don't have a dog in the hunt anymore, so to speak. But anyhow.
Can you explain a little bit about validation?
Validation. There again, you want to make sure that you know when validation is, the time and the date. It's probably going to cost you, a handful of dollars to get your pig validated. And if it's for a major pig, a major validation, we're going to pull hair. Of course, we're going to read ear notches, and you've got quite a bit of paperwork to fill out. So maybe get there early. But make sure that you have, I like to have the pigs at home already and let them get settled down a little bit before you yank them up, haul them to town, on a trailer, and make sure, there again, is it cold outside? You need to put a tarp on your trailer. Can you borrow your neighbor's trailer that's closed in? It's cold and raining and it's December, and we have a cold front blowing in and you've got him in an open top trailer. It's pretty hard on him. Or is it 95 and sunshine and you got those little white pigs in the back? So there again, I would, you just got to do your homework. You got to kind of plan ahead and so forth. Most of these validations are all done on weekends or, in the evenings. And so they're set up where you've got time to make it, on an average work day. No questions. Everybody, I did a horrible job and confused them all.
If y'all have any questions, you are more than welcome to unmute yourself and ask them or type them in the chat as we go along.
I don't know. I kind of made me a list there and I kind of went down through it. I don't know if I helped anybody or. I would highly recommend on the sickness. Make sure that you wash your pig. If he goes to limping, we need, there's a few things we can do about the limping process. But those are things that it's got to happen quick. You can't wait till next week and say, oh, by the way, my pig was limping last week and he's still limping. Well, that fever, that arthritis is probably already set up in that joint. There's nothing we can do about it. And you bought one pig, so now we've got a limping pig. And there's no guarantee. even by catching them on an early date, doesn't mean that you can fix everything. There's no fix-alls. You know, you gotta sometimes be a lucky person. And but buying one pig is it's pretty tough. It's pretty tough. And so, anyhow, but make sure you take care of your pig. Feed it twice a day. That's easy. Get a good bond with that pig. Make sure you gentle. And you can start exercising that pig. The sooner the better. Don't wait till the last 30 days. Say, all right, I'm starting now. You know, you're probably behind the 8 ball, so to speak, because a lot of the other kids you compete against maybe been walking their pigs 2 or 3 months ago. And so, and some of these pigs are hard-headed. Some are just flat crazy. I don't know why or how or what. It's just in their DNA, I assume. So the sooner you start, the better, and the better your chances you have. But you want to make sure you do your homework at home, and that way you're not waiting until the day of the show and say, you know what, my pig doesn't walk very good. It's pretty hard to beat that. The judges that most kind of shows get are real good and they're patient with the kids, but if you've got a pig that the judge cannot get a good look at, a lot of times you're one of the first ones, and he gets a token or ribbon to kind of clean the pen out so that he can work with those kids that have been working with the pigs and really get a good look at it. So keep that in mind. Do your homework, and as far as getting the pig ready where it needs to go. And scales are very, very important. You want to weigh every 7 days. Maybe when your pig is little, you might go over 14 days just because they're little and they're not gaining very pound a day or whatever. But golly, we get down to Thanksgiving, you sure need to be weighing every day. Keep track of it. And it's just kind of neat to look from year to year and say, you know what, this is what we weighed last year, and 2 years ago we did this, and you know, and it worked real good for us, or it didn't work for us. We need to do something different. So keep that in mind.
So sheep can't eat copper. What, can pigs not have any certain mineral or supplement or anything like that?
You know, I'm sure that there's probably some that can't. My recommendation is don't try to create something new. We've got all these pig feeds out there that these companies have spent millions and millions of dollars making, and you know, have been testing and researching, and that's what works good. I think I said earlier, you know, whether you use the Mormons or you know, ACO or Lindner's or whatever the case may be, get on their website. They've got all their feeds listed, and they even have some virtual tours, so to speak, of their feeds. And they even have some talks about, hey, this particular feed here will do this on a particular kind of feed. So get on there, spend a little time and look at this. And there's all kinds of supplements and additives and joint this, you know, supplements and all these things. You know, you need to decide, well, first of all, can I afford to buy all those things? Do I really need all those things? You know, and so, you know, I think the best thing to do, the best advice I give is get on those websites and look at those feed companies and the things that they have and talk to your breeders. It's because they're there to help. They want to see you do well. You know, you spent your time and effort and money to go buy this pig from them. They want to see you do as best you can. You're advertising for them as well, you know. And so, anything else?
So should you manage a gilt project differently than you would manage a barrow project?
A barrow project or a gilt project? Good question. You know, the gilt project, are we showing this gilt? Are we raising this gilt as a replacement to make a sow out of? You know, that's a whole different deal, because if we're just raising a gilt back that we think is going to make a great sow, but we're not going to show her, we need to feed her differently than we would one that we're going to show. Because there again, we're just going to give her feed to make sure she grows and she becomes that female that becomes cycling and that we can breed her. If we're going to show this gilt, You know, we're looking for muscle and shape and rib, very similar to the way we are these bears. You know, so and that goes back to that, do I show a gilt or do I show a bear on county show? You know, gilts tend to, if as we get 6 and 7 months of age, they're just going to start cycling. They come in heat. You know, they may go off feed. That first heat cycle may happen 5 months, 6 months of age. They may go off feed 3, 4, 5 days, or not eat near as much, just because they're going through that first heat cycle. You know, we have people that buy pigs strictly as bears because they don't want to mess with the gilts in the heat cycle. And so, because they're going to cycle, you know, every 21 days. And so they cycle this date, and next 21 days falls on your county show. You say, oh my, now I have to fight this gilt, you know. And then when they are in that full-blown heat, sometimes it's difficult to show them. They will lock up and they don't want to move. And so, you know, it depends on, you know, everybody has a different preference of what they want, a gilt or a bear show. It's a county shows, unless your county show is strictly a bear show. As far as going to the majors and you're going to go to Kerrville or something like that to take a gilt, you want to, you know, and we're trying to show her to sale, whether it's San Antonio or wherever, it's a crossbred deal. You know, she's got to have a lot of shape to compete with those other ones. But yet she's got to look like a breeding female. So it's kind of a fine line you're following there to produce that. If we're going strictly as a bear, well, we're going to feed that bear just a nickel difference in the fact that we're going to try to get a lot of muscle shape from that bear. And maybe not quite as fat as we might some of the gilts. And so, you know, there again, from what I started out there, or I think the second thing we talked about was where are you going to go with this pig, and what is our end result there? Where are we going to go? How are we going to feed this thing, and where are we going to show it at? Or are we just going to keep it for a replacement? So.
All right, we'll give y'all just a couple more minutes to ask any questions y'all have, and if we don't get any questions, we'll go ahead and wrap up for the evening.
Hopefully we've been confusing about it.
I say y'all are always welcome to continue to email us questions afterwards, and we're happy to help y'all. We know sometimes this information takes a little bit of time to digest as well. So we got a couple of thank yous for Mr. Shows.
Good. Thank you for attending.
All right, y'all, we're going to go ahead and wrap up for this evening. Mr. Shows, thank you so much. We really appreciate all of the knowledge that y'all helped us with today. And y'all have a great evening.